Hey everyone! Welcome back to ZoomInData. And this is episode 9 of our KQL Concepts Deep Dive series. Today we are exploring query limits, quotas, and throttling in KQL and Azure Data Explorer. We are keeping everything pure concepts and interview focused. If you missed episode 8 on time handling philosophy, it's worth a quick review. Let's get started. Slide 2. Here is our roadmap for today. ADX enforces query limits to protect system stability and fairness. Limits include row count, memory usage, CPU time, and query timeout. Quotas control concurrent queries, ingestion rate, and resource allocation. Throttling occurs when limits are exceeded to prevent overload. These boundaries are theoretical safeguards for big data environments. Understanding limits helps design sustainable queries and clusters. And this topic is common in interviews for Azure Data Engineer and scaling roles. Let's dive into the details. Let's start with query limits in ADX. Row limit caps the number of rows returned by a query. Memory limit prevents a single query from consuming too much RAM. CPU time limit restricts how long a query can run on compute nodes. Query timeout stops long-running queries to free resources. These limits are per query safeguards against runaway operations. They ensure one bad query does not impact the entire cluster or other users. Now let's talk about quotas and resource governance. Concurrent query quota limits how many queries run simultaneously. Ingestion quota controls data ingestion rate per cluster. Compute quota allocates CPU and memory across workloads. Quotas can be adjusted at cluster or database level. Quotas enforce fairness in shared multi-tenant environments. These are the guardrails that keep large-scale ADX clusters stable and equitable. Look at this diagram. It shows how quotas keep everything balanced in an ADX cluster. In the center is the cluster itself. 3 main branches come out. Top branch for queries, people icon, how many queries can run at once. Left branch for ingestion, data flow arrow, how fast data can come in. Right branch for compute, CPU, memory bars, how much processing power is available. Each branch has a hard quota limit line capping it. That's the enforced boundary so no single workload hogs everything. And see the small scale icon at the bottom? That's fairness in action. Quotas make sure queries, ingestion, and compute share resources equitably in a shared cluster. This design prevents overload and keeps the system stable at big data scale. Next up is throttling mechanisms in ADX. Throttling reduces query priority or delays execution when limits are hit. Throttling protects cluster health during high load. Users see throttling errors or delayed results when exceeded. Throttling is temporary and lifts when load decreases. Proper query design avoids frequent throttling. Throttling is ADX's way of saying, slow down, to keep everything running smoothly for everyone. These limits, quotas, and throttling are theoretical boundaries in big data. They prevent resource starvation and denial of service scenarios. Boundaries balance performance, cost, and reliability. Exceeding boundaries triggers throttling or errors intentionally. Understanding boundaries guides cluster sizing and query optimization. This is not a bug. It's by design to keep massive scale systems healthy. Take a look at this diagram. It sums up the whole idea of boundaries in big data clusters. In the center is your big data cluster. Around it is the inner ring of theoretical boundaries. Those are your limits and quotas, the invisible guardrails keeping things safe. If a query or workload crosses those lines, see the outer arrows shooting out to throttling and errors. The system kicks in to protect itself. The balance scale icon reminds us these boundaries ensure fairness. No single user or query hogs everything. The shield icon shows protection. The cluster stays healthy even under heavy load. And the warning icon says, heads up, cross the line, and you'll hit throttling or errors on purpose. This is all by design. Boundaries aren't bugs, they're what make massive scale ADX stable and fair for everyone. Why does this topic matter in interviews? Interviewers ask about limits and throttling in production scenarios. Common questions include, what happens when a query hits limits? And, how do you avoid throttling? Understanding boundaries shows knowledge of real-world scaling. This topic is critical for designing reliable monitoring and analytics solutions. Being able to explain throttling and quotas makes you stand out as someone who thinks about production, not just development. To wrap up, ADX uses limits, quotas, and throttling to protect cluster stability. Limits cap rows, memory, CPU, and query duration per query. Quotas control concurrency, ingestion, and resource allocation. Throttling delays or rejects work during overload. These boundaries are essential safeguards in big data environments. Respect them, design around them, and your clusters will stay healthy. That's episode 9 done. Thanks for spending time with me on ZoomInData. Next in episode 10, Why No Select Keyword, we will explore projection philosophy in pipe-based languages and why KQL does things differently. Homework to lock this in. Explain to someone or out loud, why does ADX throttle queries and what triggers it? Think of a query pattern that might hit row or memory limits. Answer this one. How do quotas differ from per query limits? If this helped, like the video, share it with anyone prepping for Azure interviews, subscribe for episode 10, and drop a comment with your biggest takeaway today. Thank you so much for watching ZoomInData. See you next time. Keep zooming in on those concepts. Bye for now.